Greetings, fellow recording nerds! Last week, we took a look at 9 reasons why expensive gear won't help you. And today, we're taking a look at the opposite side of that debate. However, before we get started, I want to make sure I'm clear on this. No, recording and mixing with expensive gear won't make or break your song. Gear does not matter as much as the knowledge and skill set you're going to learn over the course of your studio journey. But does that mean I'm planning on getting rid of all this amazing stuff back here? Hell no. Here's 9 reasons why expensive gear is absolutely awesome. Number 1, it looks cooler and it's easier to use. Let's get the least important and most obvious fact out of the way. Expensive gear just plain looks cool. Sleek designs, lots of flashy LEDs. It certainly helps give your studio a professional and polished vibe. Not that that's particularly important, but hear me out. When you throw a lot of money at something, be it a new guitar or a new car, and even, yes, studio gear, you're going to sink quite a bit of time into it. Because you've dropped money on it, you're going to want to use it. Basic human behavior. I've had many guitar players bring in absolute crap and insist on using it because they paid for it. And in the studio game, because you spent money on your gear, you're going to instinctually take better care of it. And when buying studio gear, longevity is king. As for the easier to use point, I'll just say this. I'm someone who's been working with both cheap and expensive gear. And truth is, the expensive stuff can be way more fun, but it is indeed much easier to use. To give you an example, I absolutely love the Neve 1073 OPX back there. It's loaded with features you're just not gonna get on cheaper preamps. It's sped up my workflow quite a bit, and it's a breeze to dial in. As a practical example, expensive gear is far better for recording stereo sources like overheads and drum rooms. When you're recording stereo pairs, you have to match the gain on your mic pre as close as possible, and the OPX has stepped gain controls in 1 dB increments, no less. But what's that mean? Well, you can adjust the gain on your mics perfectly, which will make your job down the line a whole lot less stressful. Some of the cheaper preamps, like my old PreSonus Digimax, didn't have stepped gain controls. And sure, in a pinch, I could use it to record just about anything, but I'd have to fuck with it a whole lot more to get everything dialed in precisely. In short, expensive gear will definitely help you shortcut the bullshit factor when it comes to recording and mixing, and you're gonna have a lot more fun doing it. Number 2, it's a lot more versatile. The great thing about expensive gear is that it's incredibly versatile. You can use it in all sorts of cool and creative ways that are going to impact the sound of your recordings. Certain preamps like Neves and APIs, when pushed into saturation, definitely have their own sonic flavor, and a good chunk of that comes from these big stinking honks of metal inside them, transformers. More on that later. And bass players, that doesn't mean we're having a special section of the video dedicated to you later. Furthermore, you can use gear in many different ways. You can track with a compressor on the way in, and you can use it like a plugin with something like RIA Insert. You can choose to really dial stuff in flawlessly each time to fit whatever project you're doing. Or if you're doing a more expensive project like a full-length album, you can dial in your gear and just set and forget the whole thing and not worry about anything else after the fact. I do this all the time in my day-to-day production, and the results have been nothing short of spectacular. Even you guys have been commenting about how good my recent mixes have been sounding. And yeah, it's not all in the gear, but it has definitely helped in a big way. And that leads me to my next point, which is number 3, it sounds better. Look, I'm not saying this to put down cheap gear. There's some cheap gear out there that's absolutely fantastic, like this guitar back here. But there's a reason certain gear remains iconic to this day. The 1176, the LA2A, the U87, Dumble amps, Atom S2As, you name it. These things have developed a reputation for being top of the line for a reason. And the reason is simply that expensive stuff tends to sound better. The quality of the components is chosen a lot more carefully because these brands have big paying clients to please and a reputation to uphold. Much like Nikki Sixx's pants, the tolerances for high-end gear are super fucking tight. And because most of the expensive gear is made by small teams and small companies, they really can't afford to put a bad product on the market, with the notable exception being the Mesa Cab Clone. Like I mentioned in the last point, a lot of this gear also has transformers in them. And unlike those amazing Michael Bay movies, transformers in audio gear are actually useful. They're used for things like matching impedances between different devices and keeping unwanted noise out of your signal. But when we drive them, that's when they saturate and they color the signal in a very pleasing and musical way. Now look, when people are out in their cars and a popular song comes on the radio that they want to turn up, they don't think to themselves, oh man, we can totally tell those vocals were recorded on an SSL console. They're not trying to decipher what kind of gear the music was recorded on. They just care that it sounds good. And like I said before, the expensive stuff sounds really fucking good. Number 4, no purchase gambling. Personally, I do a lot of research before I drop my hard-earned money on anything. Not just studio gear, but everyday stuff as well. Regardless of what you're buying, research can definitely help you separate the good shit from the bad shit. So what's the point here? Like I mentioned before, expensive gear is usually made with much more care in mind, so when you go and buy something expensive, you can more or less be rest assured that your purchase won't be a wasteful one. It's like that old saying goes, buy nice or buy twice. You guys might have heard of Bujera amps before. A few years ago, when I was demoing one of them, I did a little bit of digging and found a small ocean of people saying that their amps were catching on fire. Now ask yourself this, when was the last time you heard about a rev catching on fire? Number 5, it retains value. Don't you just love those days when your drummer calls you up and asks, hey man, can you come bail me out of jail? Apparently, writing fraudulent checks is perfectly fine to this idiot. So you have to come up with a few grand to get the moron out of jail. Well, you can always sell an expensive piece of gear and have him buy it back for you. Yeah, good luck with that, like he's ever gonna get a job. Seriously though, if at some point you want to sell an expensive piece of gear, you're probably going to get a good chunk of what you spent on it back. For example, I bought a Vintech Dual 72 way back in 2000 and I sold it in 2020 for about 80% of what I paid for it. And for all you guys who bought 5150s back in the early 2000s, you can pretty much get double your money on them these days. Number 6, it's an investment and yes, you can afford it. Okay, let me explain this one to all the bass players out there in the audience. The biggest problem with expensive gear is, well, the price. Not everyone can afford to just up and drop a few $1,000s on a Pultec EQ after all. But to those of you who want to run a great recording studio, let me ask you this. What are your priorities? Do you want to run a studio or do you want to get wasted with your buddies every weekend? Would you rather save your money and get some amazing fucking studio gear, or would you rather spend it on designer clothes and the latest piece of technological excrement your overlords from the Fruit Logo company have bestowed upon planet Earth? Look, genius, if you stop wasting your money on stupid shit you don't fucking need, you'd be surprised how quickly it adds up. I'm talking to you guys throwing your money away on DoorDash. And if you're serious about this job, then you're going to have to invest in your studio. And yes, you can make it happen. And if you're smart, you'll find some really great stuff out there. Now, I've got this beauty here. This is the United Audio FET 47. It sounds every bit as good as the original, but costs 4 times less. And while a real 1176 might be fantastic, you can find many great recreations of it for far less money, like the ones from Stamp Audio that I've got sitting right off camera here. They may not be cheap, but they're far more reasonably priced, and they definitely deliver the goods in terms of sound quality. Number 7, it shows people you know what you're doing. Nothing wows potential clients like racks full of expensive gear, especially if they're young and never had a chance to use it before. Seriously, go stick a dual rectifier in your amp rack and don't forget to bring a mop to clean up the drool. But this isn't just about client bait. If you're doing recording professionally, having expensive gear can definitely serve as a vote of confidence. It lets your clients know, hey, this guy has cool and expensive shit. He probably has a good idea of what he's doing. Now let's be honest, if you've dropped several thousands of dollars on studio gear, you wouldn't have just done that for shits and giggles. Chances are you want to use that gear, and at those price points, you kind of have to know what you're doing. Unless, of course, your parents are rich and bought you everything. Number 8, it gets you desired results faster. Yeah, no fucking shit. See, the thing is, we've got hundreds of plugins out there that try and emulate what the expensive studio gear actually does. And while that technology has advanced quite a bit over the last few years, expensive audio gear has been more or less the same as it's always been. Sure, there are certain tweaks and revisions made, prices go up and down due to different components and where the damn things were made, but the core technology has remained largely unchanged. Digital emulations, on the other hand, are still largely in their infancy. Sure, some of them sound great, some of them sound absolutely amazing, and some of them make me question why the fuck someone would put time into developing. Point being is that, yes, you can absolutely use them to get fantastic results, but the real stuff is still going to be better, even if it's by a small margin. And part of that is you're going to get your desired results faster. Not just because of the better sound and ease of use, but because it's designed in a way where whatever you do with it is going to work. You guys have heard me say this before, but the reason I love the Distressor sitting back there, and I've had it since 2003, is because it's just really damn hard to make something sound bad with it. If you value your time, this stuff can certainly speed up your workflow. Not only will it get you great results with minimal dicking around, but it will also force you to make a decision and settle on it, instead of fiddling with virtual knobs, which is essentially just playing with yourself. 9. You can offer people something they don't have at home. For better or for worse, advancements in recording technology have brought the studio into people's bedroom. The market is saturated more than ever because just about anybody with a cracked DAW, cracked plugins, and too much time on their hands can become your competition today. So if you want your studio to be competitive, you have to offer something your clients can't just download from the internet. This can usually be the ability to record live drums or a great selection of tube amps. But another thing you can use to market yourself is the great outboard gear that you have. The preamps, the compressors, the EQs, the microphones, whatever. Your potential clients have a choice. Do they go to their friend's house and record with a cheap condenser into a cheap interface in a makeshift vocal booth they put up with their bed sheets? Or do they come to your studio? Your studio, which has gear specifically made for recording and mixing. If you're smart, a significant investment in acoustic treatment. These are musicians we're talking about, guys. They live for shiny shit with cool LEDs. And if you're any good, chances are those clients will come back, confident that you've got the skills and the gear to give them what they're after. All right. All right, we good? Yep, okay. Okay. Fuck. Fuck! Oh, come on! One more time. There, that worked.